Hare Krishna. So this presentation is about the survival of ISKCON. So if you are interested in ISKCON's survival, then this presentation is for you. So there are some demographic trends in the world globally. I will start with populations are actually shrinking all over the world in most countries. To replacement level for the population is calculated to be approximately 2.1 children per woman. So if it's below that, the population will slowly shrink. In some places, it's shrinking now really fast. For instance, in South Korea, in 3 generations, we would expect to have something like only 4 people alive for every 100 people today. Anyway, in other places it's not that drastic, but this does have implications for religion. So, what kinds of trends do we see for the religions globally? First, related to growth, Islam will catch up with Christianity by 2050 with the current growth because they have large families and manage to pass on the tradition to the children. Christianity, its future is mostly seen in sub-Saharan Africa. That's where Christianity tends to grow at the current moment. And what about non-religion, atheism, and stuff like that? Projection is it will actually go down in relative numbers because the families tend to be approximately, or well, generally speaking, below the replacement level. So, what about new religions? So, I take this concept up because ISKCON is a new religion, at least in those places where it is new. So, we know it's based on old Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, but in many places, ISKCON is a new religious phenomenon. So, what are the conditions for survival for new religions? Condition one is how the religion manages to pass on the legacy of the founder to the next generation of leaders. Well, ISKCON managed to do this, so the first test has been passed, and 99% of new religions do not pass this test. The other one is the ability to recruit new members, which ISKCON has had some success as well. But after the legacy has been passed and new members have been recruited, then to continue existing or surviving depends on two factors. The new religion first needs to maintain a sufficient level of fertility, meaning the families need to be large enough, and also the youth have to be socialized into the tradition. Otherwise, it doesn't matter you have 10 children, but if none of them continues in Krishna consciousness, then that will not contribute to the survival of the tradition. So there are other factors as well, but all of these combined are not as important as these that I just mentioned. So let's take a look at these. So what contributes to fertility first? So one thing is rural setting. That in and of itself does not have to be related to religion, but in religious communities it has been observed that rural communities tend to have larger families. The other one is related to the culture and teachings of the religion. If there is emphasis on the importance of family and procreation, for instance, by explicitly stating stuff like children are seen as blessings from God or a stable family means spiritual success. So these sort of ideas tend to contribute positively to fertility. Conversely, if there's a lot of emphasis like children are a burden and family life is a sign of attachment and failure in spiritual life, then I think it's obvious that that does not contribute to fertility in the same way. Another aspect that contributes to fertility is actually frequency of religious observance. What this means is that religion needs to be active part of the life of the family. So what does not contribute to fertility is nominal membership. So if you are just nominally member of any religion, that does not tell anything about whether the family will be big or small, but the other factors do contribute. So what about socialization? Let's say the families for ISKCON will be large in the future, many children. Then we have to see what contributes to socialization. So the children need to grow up and maintain and continue pass on the tradition to their children. Otherwise, it will die out after some generations. So, one aspect that is important is a deliberate effort within the family to keep religion in the forefront. So, nobody can do it on behalf of the family. Family has to take this seriously. The other one is to engage the youth in regular religious practice, so not only theology but practice as well, and to expose them to religious experiences, whether at home or going to places where that is facilitated, but that has to be emphasized as well. Then another aspect is to have a close relationship with parents or supportive non-parents who are obviously like followers of the tradition that we want to socialize the youth into. And then there are indirect parental influences, for instance, taking children to settings where religious youth interact, because this provides peer support, which becomes increasingly important after some age. The early childhood, not so much parents are the main inspiration, but let's say 12, 13, 14, teenage, then peer support becomes really important. And then finally, monitoring children's use of media. I will not dwell into that more. It would deserve its own presentation, but I will leave it at that. So then, specifically, I want to mention the role of mothers because the research I have gone through, they are quite they agree on this point. Women have traditionally been in charge of religious socialization, and this is still the case. And mothers are traditionally the primary caregiver associated with either religious stability or the child's adoption of religious beliefs. So, in this regard as well. And then mothers have also been observed to serve as religious role models. So these are some explanations. There are other explanations as well, but these three are kind of primary. Okay. So then I want to mention the influence of problematic role models. So this is what moves the child's worldview into the opposite direction. So a problematic relationship with a parent or with some other adults who are like impressing the child that I don't want to be like him or her can create a contrast. So if adult guardians, whether parents or teachers or whatever, display abusive forms of religiosity or spirituality, the children may very well leave the religion. And ISKCON, this has taken place in ISKCON, is well documented. So this is an important point to protect the children from abusive forms of religiosity, abusive or bad role models. So, conclusion is of primary importance in the socialization is to have nurturing relationships between children and parents or other supporting adults, and in some in the adolescence, then peer support as well. Okay, so finally, taking a look at the history of South Asian religions, because Jainism, Buddhism, and most strands of Hinduism do have a very visible renunciate presence. So traditionally, renunciation has gone hand in hand with large families and normal religious socialization. So it has not been seen as a problem. Indeed, it has not been a problem because most people have had normal family dynamics where they grew up. But things start changing approximately 130 years ago with Vivekananda, who founded Ramakrishna Mission, and then that model where male renunciates are in the limelight, in the leadership roles, was followed by Bhaktisiddhanta's Gaudiya Math, and ISKCON in its early phase, 60s, 70s, 80s. And here the idea is that male renunciates, who obviously are not speaking warmly about families and having a lot of children, when they are in the role, act as role models, then it just might be the case that renunciation becomes seen as more important than families. And I think some of that has actually taken place in ISKCON, and it's problematic from the survival of ISKCON point of view. Okay. So then there are other South Asian based spiritual movements. What can we learn about them? So, yoga and meditation associated with Hinduism and Buddhism were a lot inspired by the culture of renunciation in the early phase of the 60s and 70s in the counter-cultural golden age, if you will. But after that, what has increasingly taken place is that gurus and lineages of yoga and meditation, where the teachers have families and are established within the so-called normal society, these presentations have actually taken over the market. So some examples, Shivananda and students lost to Krishnamacharya and students of yoga know what this means. In Buddhism, monastic traditions are small. They exist, they are visible, but they are really small. Whereas mindfulness, which is inspired by John Kabat-Zinn, who is like a, to use ISKCON language, grihasta, so that form of meditation is the one that actually took over the world. So what are the lessons to ISKCON's survival? So Gaudiya Vaishnavism does have both theological and cultural resources to change the ethos from renunciation to family-friendly emphasis. And this is essential to survival. As per the demographics I just presented, there would be more, but time does not permit to really demonstrate how this is super important. So another point is based on what we can learn from other spiritual movements, actually, in order to recruit new members, it just might be a good idea even from that point of view, considering what has been going on in the larger yoga and meditation world. So the best case scenario would be to have a lot of new recruits, and the new people will be then recruited with the idea that the success in spiritual life means having a stable family and then passing on the tradition to at least 2.2 children, because that would be beyond the replacement level. So the best case scenario will not only enable ISKCON to survive, but actually also grow. So I will end with this. Thank you for your attention. Any questions you might have, that has to be by email. So wishing you a nice conference, everyone.